Ngozi, Dr. Ngozi, Director General for the WTO. What in your view, Dr.
Welcome back to
Ngozi,
Newsday. Thanks for staying with us. We now cross live to Davos, Switzerland for our continuous coverage of the ongoing World Economic Forum, where a panel session on finding growth in uncertain times with World Trade Organization Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, President and CEO of the World Economic Forum, George Brende, and a host of others are speaking. Let's listen.
But I think there are two words we need to pay attention to in the IMF forecast with respect to the way it saw the economies of the world. One is divergent and the other is uncertain. So the different economies are growing differently. The US is doing better. China got its growth target of 5% last year, but the forecast for this year is 4.6. Europe is forecast has actually gone down, low growth. And the emerging markets in Asia, some are doing well. Africa is doing above trend growth. So, but what is very evident is that we really need to push from almost all regions of the world. And I think there are four things that I'd like to mention we need. The first and foremost, I think, is either maintaining or restoring, depending on the economy, macroeconomic stability and good management. And that means that inflation that the IMF has shown us is coming down globally. Yes, the central bankers have done a good job, but there's still a lot to do. And many countries are still struggling, and it's hitting the poor the hardest. At the same time, there's a need for fiscal consolidation in many countries, with fiscal deficits getting quite high, and debt. We heard earlier on the Swiss president talk about high levels of debt in many countries and debt service. So we still need strong macroeconomic management if we're to restore growth. I think the second thing is openness and predictability of markets, of global markets. Why is that? This has delivered from us, as we heard repeatedly from all three speakers, from President Ursula von der Leyen, President of Switzerland, and from the Vice Premier of China. Openness and predictability of trade has delivered. And I have to say now that in spite of all the challenges and rising protectionism, our numbers show at the WTO that trade has been largely resilient. 80%, better than the 75% we said before, of world goods trade is taking place on WTO's most favored nation terms, on WTO rules. I think this is something the world needs to preserve. So that is, it's delivered, we can deliver again. I think the second thing we need to think about is how to deal with the issue of building further resilience in our global economies if we are to grow. And what do I mean by that? We've seen a lot of over-concentration of supply chains or manufacturing in certain sectors. And we need to build resilience by something we call reglobalization at the WTO. I will not cease, Borge, in promoting this, because what we're saying is it's true. The world actually needs to deconcentrate certain supply chains and certain manufacturing. It's not normal that 90% of something like chips that the world needs is manufactured in one place, or 70% of minerals are processed in one country, or 80% of vaccines are exported from 10 countries. So how do we decentralize supply chains? How do we diversify? And business is actually doing this already, so that we can build resilience. At the WTO, we are promoting an instrument that will help countries strengthen their economies and attract investment to help this reglobalization, which can create jobs in place. I heard President von der Leyen saying the EU is actually moving in that direction of trying to promote local manufacturing, not just coming into countries, coming into Africa and extracting and taking away, but actually putting the supply chains on the ground. I think that will create jobs, make people stay in place instead of trying to migrate elsewhere, and create wealth. And I think the fourth and last thing I'd like to say is technology and AI. We have the work we've done at the WTO shows that if we adopt if there's the ability to adopt AI on the trade side at any rate, it really increases productivity, lowers trade costs in such a way that we can have double-digit growth in trade, from now till 2040, about 14%, if we are able to adopt this in an even manner across the world. Of course, we have to deal with issues of the digital divide in developing countries, which we have to overcome. So let me just end by saying, look, openness and predictability of trade, maintaining the rules that have worked for us for so long is key. If we decide to fragment into 2 trading blocks, we've just done some simulations that show that doing that, 2 geopolitical trading blocks, and adding uncertainty of trade policy leads to a real loss in global GDP in the longer term of 6.4%. This is $6.75 trillion, so it's like losing the economy of Japan and Korea combined. And this cannot be done. We cannot have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ngozi. I'll move on then to David Rubenstein, founder and also chairman of Carlyle, one of the larger private equity groups in the world. We will have President Trump speaking virtually in Davos on Thursday afternoon. He will have a dialogue also with some CEOs. There's been a lot of focus, of course, on the inaugural address. But we would like to know a little bit more what kind of economic policy do you expect from the new Trump administration? The U.S. had 3.1% growth last year, not bad for an industrialized country. Will it stay like this? And what are the measures? Because there are trade-offs, for example, between immigration and inflation. There are other trade-offs also about tax reductions. There's also the deficit and all that. So where will we see U.S. in 4 years?
Well, that's a tall order. I don't know if I can give you the answer to that, but I would say that President Trump took office just yesterday, and already he's issued a lot of executive orders, and his policies are pretty well known. He's going to have a massive tax cut, which is designed to spur economic growth. I think he is going to try to impose some tariffs. We don't know the extent of them, but he's going to do that, and I think to get greater trade cooperation between various trading partners in the United States, maybe using it as a bit of a negotiating tool, but we'll find out. I think the principal problems the United States will have going forward are several in terms of economic growth. One, get inflation down from where it is, still a little bit higher than people would like. If it's down a little bit more from where it is, the Fed will begin to lower interest rates a bit more. Secondly, getting the tax cut and other regulatory changes that President Trump wants implemented and into law relatively quickly. And he has a big agenda for changing regulations and other things that will, I think, spur economic growth. Third, getting the ability of the natural gas and the oil business to be able to increase even more from where it already is. It's producing 13 million barrels a day, which is the highest we've ever had in the United States, but I think he believes he could do more. I think the biggest impediments to growth are, I think, solving, and for the world generally, solving the wars in the Middle East, including resolving some situations with Iran. If you can make progress on the Middle East and you can make progress on Russia, Ukraine, I think you're going to see a lot of economic growth do quite well around the world. The U.S.'s problems are not the biggest problems. I think the biggest challenge for economic growth around the world I see are the global South, which because of the challenges of the last 15 years, the global South went further behind the developed markets than maybe would be desired. So, for example, the crisis of 07, 08, 09, the problems of COVID, and the problems of inflation, I think adversely impact the global South more than would certainly be desired, and more than it did the developed world. And then you've got the new frontier of artificial intelligence. If artificial intelligence and other new technology developments are going to have the real great impact on the world, they have to be made available as well to the global South. The United States can't just be a country which has the great advantage of artificial intelligence and other technology improvements and not share them in some fair way with others around the rest of the world. I think right now, President Trump has the mandate of the American people to do largely what he would like. He's got control of the Congress, and he's got the control of the executive branch, and I think you'll see him doing a lot of fairly robust things that might not have been anticipated before. I think the business community generally is not completely united, but generally they're happy with the regulatory relief that they think they're going to get, and with some of the economic policy, particularly tax cuts. So I think the United States is feeling fairly bullish about the economy in the next couple years or so. The things we've got to do is make certain that the wars that we are, helping some of the combatants, that those go away, and that would be good, and no new wars break out. That would be helpful.
Thank you, David. Just a short follow-up question on immigration and also debt. Those two things,
Yes.
do they keep you up at night? Because the debt will increase. Is then the U.S. just going to grow itself out of it? On immigration, we know there's already a tight labor market in the U.S. and, in construction sector, 2 million out of 7 million are illegal immigrants. So if you don't have them, I guess that's not going to bring the inflation down. Those trade-offs, do you think they're thinking about that in the White House and the Treasury today?
The United States currently has about 50 million immigrants, more than any other country by far. Nobody's even close in terms of having that many immigrants, and many of them have become naturalized American citizens. The United States today has a demographic issue, which is that we are not reproducing, young women are not reproducing enough, 1.6 per woman of childbearing age children, when you need to have probably 2.1 to have your population stay the same. And the population is aging. So we have an aging population, and you have young women not reproducing enough, you have a population problem. And the only way you can solve that is with immigration. And that's what the United States has done for the last 30, 40, 50 years, is solve our issues with population and for getting enough workers through immigration. Clearly, there's some concern about illegal immigration, and President Trump got a lot of political benefit out of that, and I think he's going to do as much as he can realistically on illegal immigration. But legal immigration, where you get highly trained workers to come in, or people that will do jobs that some Native Americans don't want to do, but they come in legally, I think that will be handled in a satisfactory way, I believe, because we cannot solve our economic problems by just pushing people out of the country who might be here illegally and thwarting all immigration in the United States. The United States won't have enough workers.
Thank you. Let me move on to Marcus Wallenberg, among a lot of other things, chairman of SEB. And the Wallenbergs are big investors also in Europe. You heard von der Leyen laying out her policies. The European growth is around 1.1 or 1.2. So seen from your viewpoint, what will it really take for Europe to revive growth? They have to implement all the 400 pages of the Draghi report, or can they learn from Spain and Greece? We wrote them off like 10 years ago, and now Spain is the fastest growing of all large OECD economies. So I think that also maybe shows that structural reforms do matter. So lay out the plan for Europe.
Well, thank you. I think in general what Mrs. von der Leyen was communicating today seems like a very good path forward. I'm very happy that she asked for the Letta and the Draghi report. I think they, you can always debate each detail in those reports, but I do think that that was the good way. And why is it good? I think it's good because over the years, Europe has tended to perhaps not understand our competitive situation and the strategic position that we find ourselves with a very strong United States and a very strong China. And therefore, our competitiveness has been challenged over time. And I think these two reports and other reports has now really put the facts on the table, showing that we really need to go forward. So what is being proposed around R&D investments, around structural infrastructure investments in the green sector, more into AI and computational power, et cetera, are very good rules and very good ambitions to have with us. I do think that we have to also understand that Europe by itself is a very large market. So we do have the possibility to get the scale here, but we also need to get the confidence back to really say that we need to get moving and cannot wait anymore for things to solve it by itself. And I think this has been a real good wake-up call for Europe. But in addition to that, I think that the Commission has always put together a new trade deal with Mercosur and with Mexico and so on. I think that has proven that the European, the attractivity of the European market is there. But I also think that we have to understand that Europe will not start moving without getting more consumer confidence and also getting ourselves in a position to support the entrepreneurs. If there's anything I'd like to add from her speech today is the focus on entrepreneurship. We should really understand and learn, I think both from the United States and China, how do we create an ecosystem that will really support entrepreneurs? And for that we know we need a singular capital market that is unified. We do need a number of institutions that can provide more risk capital, private risk capital, and there are a number of other factors that will help entrepreneurs to develop their business. I think we cannot only look upon the state and the big companies, we also have to get the small and innovative part of the economy going in a much stronger phase.
I think you're touching on something incredibly important with the startup communities. We were at a dinner last night where it came out that, for example, in India, there are 120,000 startups, yes. 130 unicorns.
Yes.
100 of them have just been established in the last years. That's also make them very competitive. Can we see something like this in Europe?
I think the basic attributes are there. I mean, of course, we have good universities, we have an educated population, we have a lot of good companies that are actually competing out there every day. So there's, we have, you know, from my point of view, we have all the ingredients to make it happen. Now we just have to stand up and get it done. And definitely, we do have the possibilities to create a big group of entrepreneurs also in Europe. But we have to study how can we support them even more to get that whole movement going in.
But someone there before, does that keep you up at night?
I would say that the Commission right now has actually put the way forward that they want to create this. I think we in business should really support them in getting it done. I think the President also discussed the need to take away red tape. Yeah, I think we should come back to that question and try to help them. But that's also a very important part to create this ecosystem for the entrepreneurs. Reduce red tape, more simple way of doing business.
Thank you, Marcus Wallenberg. Let me then move on to Khaldoon Mubarak, CEO of Mubadala, one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. Maybe you can be kind of a referee here, because you are faced with tough discussions on how to allocate your capital. You heard a little bit now on China, Europe, the US. Or maybe you could also touch on how you look at the GCC. But how do you look at the prospects for the global economy this year and next year? And what's, from your viewpoint, would have to happen to get us back on where we were before when it comes to global growth?
Well, I think sovereign funds have an important role to play in supporting growth globally. There's no doubt sovereign funds with their high liquidity position, they're highly capitalized, their ability to think long-term and invest with a long-term perspective, I think allows sovereign funds to play a role. And I think more and more I see that important for support of global growth When I look at growth today, I think for us as Mubadala, we look at, for sure, we look at Asia, we look at the US. The United States, there's a clear case for what we expect to see. I'm not going to repeat what David said. I agree with almost everything David said most of the time. So there's a clear strategy I think that the U.S. is embarking on, and that will spur growth in the U.S. And I think that'll make it very attractive, I think, for investors. Asia, I think, continues to be a very important, I think, continent for growth. But I'm going to, if you allow me, just kind of bridge back into that by using the UAE as an analogy. Use the UAE as an example of how, because I think it's very interesting what the UAE has done over these last 20 years. Right now, I think from an economy that was predominantly dependent on oil and gas and on energy as its main contributor to its GDP, today the UAE in 2025, when I look back at last year, just a couple of interesting data points. I was looking at a study this morning. Abu Dhabi was rated the safest city in the world for the 7th year running. 3 out of the 7 main cities in the UAE were rated in the top 10. Stanford issued a study in the 4th quarter of last year where it rated the largest AI nations in terms of countries that they rated the most vested in the AI space. The UAE ranked 5th in that. In terms of FDI, behind the United States, the UAE came 2nd in terms of FDI attractiveness, or attracting FDIs in 2024. That's huge for a country the size of the UAE. I would complement that with, in 23 and 24, the largest number of high net worth individuals moving, in terms of global movement, moved into the UAE, number 1, ahead of the United States, Singapore, and many countries in Europe. So these are, it shows you that you can create a growth story. Today, the economy has, I think, $500 million. It was the GDP of the UAE growing at around 6%. That will continue. The market capitalization is about $1 trillion right now in the UAE. So there is a clear case, I think, for the UAE when it comes to growth as an example of, in this new world, how to create growth. And to diversify from one sector to a multifaceted economy with wise, I would say, clear, steady leadership and an execution plan that the UAE has had over these years. Going back to what we look at as Mubadala. So when we look at the UAE, obviously this is a great platform for investment in all the sectors we like. The sectors that I think many of my colleagues on the panel here today are talking about: AI, technology, energy. These are all spaces that when you look at, whether you look at Asia, whether you look at Africa, whether you look at the United States, South America, that's where growth is going to be coming from these sort of spaces. And I think from our perspective as investors, we have to look at how we invest in these right geographies, where these sectors are going to be supported with countries, governments that have regulatory environments that are complementary or enhancing or supportive or attractive, a business sector or a business ecology that is attractive for investors. These are the places that will inevitably spur growth. And then from the UAE perspective, and I'll use 2 examples just quickly. One is, because I think it's relevant to this conversation. Last week, there was a very important contract or project that was awarded in the UAE, about a $6 billion project, in which what we are doing is we're building the largest gigawatt solar panel energy project. This is a very interesting project. We're going to put 5.2 gigawatts of solar panels over 90 square kilometers of acreage, with 19 gigawatts of battery storage. That's going to essentially produce 1 gigawatt of uninterrupted baseload solar power. That is perfectly suited for the technology and AI revolution that's taking place. But to be able to do that at an attractive, commercially viable and sustainable price, I think that's the game. And it's about scalability. Well, we're doing it. This is, something that we're doing in the UAE. It's going to be in production in 2027. And that combines with the second aspect, which is heavy investment in the AI enablement space, which is data center capacity, compute. And I think that's an area, again, that we are very attracted to. We're looking at that, and I think that will spur growth, again, in the UAE, but more importantly, in this case, globally. The US will be a massive area for growth in that area. I expect the same in Asia, and I expect us to follow these pathways.
Thank you. I wish this panel could continue for another 15 minutes because I have a lot of follow-up questions. You have 3 minutes left. So I think Dr. Ngozi will allocate them to you. But, you know, there is no such thing as a free lunch. So it will come with a question. And I think one of the things we are worried about or following very carefully, at least at the WTO in Geneva, is the question of tariffs. Trump said yesterday, after the inaugural speech, he said that if Mexico and Canada don't get it right on immigration, he'll put 25% tariffs on them by 1st of February. And we know from the past, though, that trade has been the engine of growth. Trade has been growing like twice the global growth. No, it's more equal. So how do you look at tariffs? We've seen it before. How worried are you? And do you think it's realistic for trade to become the growth engine again? Or is it just Director General of WTO and former trade ministers that believe in that?
Well, I mean, thank you. Of course, I cannot say, you know, I'm concerned, but you can see my attitude and approach is keep calm. Let's see what policies are actually enacted and implemented before we get overexcited. That's the first thing. You know, cautious optimism. I know it's coming down and the tariffs will be pronounced, but look at what is being done first. Everybody thought that by today or tomorrow we would get, you know, an executive order with 60% tariffs or 30% and so on. So far, we've seen the request for a slew of studies and investigations of the various trading partners and various types of trade agreements to see the impact on the United States. That's a bit encouraging in the sense that at the WTO, we say that if you feel another member is causing you harm, the first thing to do is not to wake up and pronounce, you know, whatever type of remedy, but to actually investigate, launch a set of studies. Now, there's a deadline for all this, which is April 1st. So let's see. But the fact that we're getting that, and possibly maybe by 1st of February, these announcements, is, I don't want to sound like I'm naive, but a little bit of let's keep calm and see what will actually happen. Second, President Trump said that he has reached out to China. So even as he announces some of these policies, he's also trying to reach out to see if there can be a dialogue. Again, there might be something promising in all of that. So yes, tariffs, we don't want a tariff war because all the modeling shows that this will not benefit, it will not benefit really anyone, the US, the rest of the world. It's going to be inflationary in many cases. Past history has shown us. We certainly don't want a tit for tat. We've lived that story before, as I said in another session earlier. The Smoot-Hawley Act of the 1930s is a movie, much as we might like reruns. We don't want to see that rerun again. So we are very much saying to our members, let's keep calm. Let's not try to do a tit for tat. Let's wait and see what happens. Let's see what the investigations give, and then we'll take it from there. So that's my answer to you. I believe that trade will still be a source of growth, to come back to that, because there are opportunities. Let's not get too tariff-focused also. I want to tell you at the WTO, the actual big thing people need to know is the WTO is more than tariffs. And that's why members think again and again about the benefits. Just, Borge, just let you, just 3 quick things. 1, the safety, we are the home of the agreement that guarantees a measure of trust and safety in the food and products that you buy. We have the agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary measures and on product standards. So at least there's a minimum of trust when something is going to a country that it meets certain standards. If you are not at the WTO, you won't benefit from that. Even customs valuation, how you value the goods on which you're going to put the tariffs. We are the home of that agreement. So beyond tariffs, there's so much more going on in trade. And I think that this is to the benefit of the world, and we still need to try to work together to make sure we keep open and predictable markets. Thank you.
Let me just add that President Trump's Secretary of Treasury said that their tariff position is a maximalist position, a negotiating position. And President Trump tends to be a transaction person. If he can negotiate a transaction, he's not as ideological about tariffs as maybe some people portray him as. So, as you said, let's wait and see what happens. I don't expect gigantic tariffs to be launched tomorrow or anytime soon. I think they'll negotiate with countries they want to have certain policies with, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Well, that's very calming. Let's keep calm. Let's give a great applause to an amazing panel on very good and very interesting, consequential topics. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, it was good that you...
We've been watching the panel session on finding growth in uncertain times. We were listening for a moment to our very own Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, where she spoke about the need for reglobalization, decentralizing and diversifying supply chains to build resilience. And I think this is something Rotus would like. You know, he's always talking about AI. And she said that technology and AI shows that if there is ability to adopt AI on the trade side, that it could lead to double-digit growth in trade if AI is incorporated. A lot was said during that interesting session.
I really enjoyed how she just broke down the dangers of the world breaking into geopolitical blocks when it comes to trading. And she gave the example that, well, they've done the mathematics inside the World Trade Organization, and it would lead to a 6% loss in global GDP. She said the value is combined, over $6 trillion, a combined value of I believe she said Korean and Japanese economies put together. So I think that was a nice touch, because everybody is still a little bit uneasy following this, the swearing in, the inauguration of Donald Trump, and nobody knows where the geopolitics will take global trade. So nice to have that conversation to douse tensions.
Good thing is he'll be speaking on Thursday based on what Rubenstein said. So I think we look forward to that.
I think the whole world is going to be tuned into that, that's for sure.
Of course.